Alright, so today we are going to talk about Apex. As I told you earlier, Apex is the proper programming language which we will use to define the logics. Right, so far we have been working with standard controllers. So basically in standard controller we don't need to write any logics from our side. We just use the logics of the controller which is already there, right? The ones which are used by Salesforce, we use the same controller. So we do not need to write our own logics, right? Now with our Apex, we are able to write our own logics, which will mean that we can create custom controllers. So that is one part. That while you work on a Visualforce page, you can create your custom controllers, and these custom controllers can be then used with the Visualforce pages. So your own logics can be, put your own actions, navigations, the way you want, you can design it. That is one part. Second thing that we can do with Apex is we can define logics to work otherwise also. I mean, we always do not have to depend on the Visualforce page or a button to initiate the action. So you can trigger certain actions on some DML operation or on something else, right? So Apex will allow you to have that controlling of the logic on some other events also, right? So that is the thing. So trigger is one of those. So trigger actually works on a DML operation. So where we can execute Apex, that is something which we will talk about. But for now we just have to understand that we have Apex which can be executed when we with the Visualforce page with the help of controller, and we can also execute Apex on some DML operation. DML means whenever there is a change being made on the database, or whenever a new record is being added to the database or being deleted from the database, or any change which is happening on the database, at that time also you can execute some logic using Apex. Okay, so let's understand what is Apex. So today we are basically going to talk about the basics of Apex, understand the language, how it works and all. Apex is a strongly typed object-oriented programming language. So what is Apex? It is a strongly typed object-oriented programming language that allows developers to execute flow and transaction control statements on the Force.com platform. Right, so this allows our developers to execute the flow and transaction control statements. So to execute certain flow or the transaction control statements can be written. Apex enables developers to add business logic to most system events. So as I was talking, I was just explaining right now that it allows you to add logics to your events, including button clicks. So these can be system events, okay, including button clicks. So Apex allows you to add logics on the button clicks, record updates, Visualforce pages. So this is where Apex can put logic. So that is what we were talking about. On a database update or on a click of the button or on Visualforce page, logics can be added using Apex. Okay. So for your understanding, this is just like any other programming language. Don't compare it with any other programming language. Most of the times I've seen people start comparing this with Java and say that, okay, you need to know Java to know Apex and all. Nothing like that. Just think of it as a programming language. Try to understand the language. That's it. Alright, so if you're not from the Java background, don't get into that I do not know Java and I cannot learn Apex. That will be a big mistake. Simply understand a simple logic that Apex is kind of your language, and we will try and understand how the language is written. Alright, so we'll keep it very simple. So first of all, For any language, when we are talking about a programming language, we need to define variables, right? So to define any of the variables, we need to understand what data types are allowed by that language, right? What type of variables we can define. So let's talk about the data types which we have in Apex. So in Apex, all variables and expressions have a data type. So all the variables have a data type in Apex. That's quite obvious that the variable needs to have a data type, and that is one of the following. So these are the data types that we have in Apex. The first one is primitives. So first data type is primitives. Second is S-objects. Third is collections. Under collection there are two types of collection, list and set, and map. So sorry, three types of collections. Alright. So now let us understand each one of them. Primitives. Apex primitive data types include, so primitives are the general data types which are used in other programming languages as well. Right, so your Apex primitive data types include Boolean, which can store only a true or false, decimal, a number that includes a decimal point, double, a 64-bit number that includes a decimal point, ID, any valid salesforce.com ID. So ID is a data type which can hold salesforce.com IDs, the record IDs that we used to deal with in Visual Force page, remember, in the URL. So those IDs can be stored in this ID data type. Double, I told you ID is the integer, the normal integer, 32-bit number. Long, a 64-bit number that does not include a decimal point. String, normal string, a set of characters. Date, a value that indicates a particular day. Date time, a value that indicates a particular day and time. Time, a value that indicates a particular time. So these are the primitive data types, and if you have done any programming or you have seen any language or any program written, you must have seen some of these, like integer, string, long, right, date time. So these are pretty common things, right? Only new thing that we have in Salesforce, which is not there in other programming languages, is ID. ID is very, very particular to Salesforce. Okay, so these are the primitive data type that we have. The first data type, which is the primitives. Under primitives we have these data types. Okay, now the second type of data that we use in our Apex programming is S-objects. S-object, the term S-object refers to any object that can be stored in Force.com platform database. Okay, so S-object actually stands for Salesforce object. S-object stands for Salesforce objects. All right. So as it says, the term S-object refers to any object that can be stored in the Force.com platform database. So any object which is stored in the database, right? So it can be a standard object, it can be a custom object. All right. An S-object variable represents a row of data and can only be declared in Apex. So an S-object variable basically represents a row of data on any object, and this is something which can be declared only in Apex. It cannot be declared anywhere else. So you do not have S-object in other programming languages. Primitives you have in other programming languages also, right? But S-object is something which can be understood only by Apex. No other programming language will understand what is an S-object. So understood, S object means Salesforce object, and S object variable basically means a row of data in that object, right? So for example, if I am talking about account, so account variable will mean, if I define a variable A with a data type account, right, which will mean A is a row of data there, means one single record in the account, one account, right? For example, let's see this here, account A equals new account, my custom object C equals my custom object, new my custom object. So let me just show you a few examples so that you can relate to this one. Okay, so alright, we understand defining string and all these things, right? For example, string. Right? This is how you define integer I equals 70. Right, so this is how we define things in programming, right? So this is the data type, this is the name, then the name of the variable, and then the value to the variable, value of the variable, right? This is how we define things. Okay. And now this is all primitives. Now we are talking about S objects. So S object, as I told you, this is Salesforce objects, right? So the logic behind this S object is pretty simple. How do you define a variable for a record in the database, right? So S object helps you define a variable for a record. So it's a variable which can hold a record, right? So records are usually stored in tables. So the data type will be the name of the table here, correct? The data type name will be name of the table, something like account A. Contact C. So here account is the data type, this is the data type, and this is the variable name, okay? Here contact is the data type and this is the variable name. Now what does this mean? This means that C is a variable of the data type contact, which means this C can hold a contact record. A can hold an account record. So you can store an account record here. But account A can be any account. It can be IBM, it can be Dell, it can be Deloitte, whatever it is. C can be any contact. It can be Ravi, it can be Ajay, whatever contacts we have, right? So that is. So you can have opportunity O or anything, O1, whatever. Variable name can be anything. So important thing is the data type. So you can define a data type for all the standard as well as custom objects you have in the system. Got it? And this is S object. Clear? Now let's look into the syntax. If you want to define a variable of a new record, the record which is already not there in the system, alright, so you can just say account A is a new account. If you're again, I'm saying that if we are talking about a record which is not there in the system, then we define things like this. The name equals Dell, industry equals technology, and then you can say insert A. So in Apex programming, every line should have this semicolon at the end. So every line gets terminated by the semicolon. Fine. And Apex is not case sensitive. It is not case sensitive. So no matter you write capitals or small, does not matter. Okay. Now, what does this code mean? So this means account A is a new account record where name of the account will be Dell and industry will be technology, right? So it's a new record, which means it is not in the system, it's not in the database. And then I insert A. So this will insert this into the database. So it will create a new record, account A, with this name and the industry. Simple. The other way of writing the same thing could have been this: account A equals new account. Then you could have said A dot name equals Dell, A dot type equals technology, and then insert A. Another way of writing the same thing could have been this: A dot name equals Dell insert A dot type equals technology, update A. Now these are the different ways of writing the same code, right? Yeah, performing the same action. So depending on how you want to do the things, what is the flow of actions that you want, you can write it. So this and this are same, and this is actually doing it in a different way. It's firstly inserting and then updating the data. Not this thing. So similarly, you can have something like contact C equals new contact, and here you can say first name equals J, last name equals Kumar. That is how it is. Clear? So this is one way of defining your S objects. But here we are just dealing with the records which are not there in the database, new records. Okay. What if I want to get the data from the database? In that case, you can write your SQL query here. SOQL is what it is called. So you can say account A equals select name, type, industry from account where name equals Dell. So now this is a query, this is a SOQL query which can go and fetch the data from the database. So it will return the record where the name is Dell. Got this thing? And then you can say a dot industry if a dot industry not equals technology, then a dot industry equals technology update A. Fine. So something like this. So if you want to fetch a record from the system and check something on that record, and based on some logic you want to update the data, this is how you can do it. Easy. Right, so we are dealing with both of the things. S object while you are using, if you are working on a new record on S object, and if you are working on a existing record from the database. That's okay. Right, so this is how it all is defined. Okay. So we have understood the S object concept. Clear? Anyone has a question, please let me know. Else we'll go to the next thing. Okay. Now the next is collection or a list. So what is a list? A list is an ordered collection of primitives or S objects. So list is basically collection of the primitives or S objects. It can be collection of primitives, it can be collection of S object that are distinguished by their indices. Okay. So list is collection of values. So those can be primitives, those can be S object. The important thing that we have in list is every value has an index number, and those values are distinguished by their indices. Alright. So for example, if you see here, we have the colors here, right? So this is basically a list of strings, right? All strings, red, orange, yellow, green, blue. So in this list, every value if you see has an index number, index 0, index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all these values are basically distinguished by the indices, the index number. Alright. The index position of the first element in a list is always 0. So the first position the index number for that will always be 0. Alright. So this is how it is. So let's see, how do we write a list or something? Ordered collection of primitives or S objects. This is what a list is. Ordered collection of primitives or S objects. Now what do we have here in the list? Let's say list of string colors. New list. This is how a list is defined. Fine. So data type, and outside that you will say list. Alright. This is how a list is defined. And you can write like red, green, blue, right? So now in this list I have three strings, right? One is red, one is green, one is blue. Now the moment we say that this is a list, our programming language Apex basically assigns an index number to each one of them. The first one gets index 0, the second one gets index 1, then 2, so that is how it goes, right? So now red has an index 0, green has an index 1, and blue has an index 2, right? These strings will be identified or distinguished based on the index number, not based on the actual value. Correct? So if I put one more red here, then this red and this red are not duplicates because this is index 0 and this is index 3. Got it? So a list is an ordered collection where every value will have an index number and they are identified based on the index number or distinguished by the index number. Now the point that we have to understand here is that a list can allow duplicate values. The values can be duplicate because those are not being distinguished based on the values, they are being distinguished based on the index number, and every value has a different index number. So whenever you have this kind of a requirement where you want to allow the duplicate values in the list, then you will use this ordered collection. Okay, so in the collection set of records or set of values you want to allow the duplicates, you have to define a list for it. Got it? If you see that there are chances that a value may get repeated in the list that you are defining, you would simply define it as a list, and list will allow the duplicate values, it will not stop the duplicate values. Alright, so that is how it is. So here are a few more syntaxes. This is defining a new list. So the moment you say list of integer, my list equals new list of integer, it defines a new list, right? Okay. This will add an element to the list. So you always have the option of adding the elements. So we will take this example. Let's say this is the list that you have defined, right? So in your list, there are 4 values right now. Okay, after some time you want to add more values here. Then what will you do? You will just say this dot add purple. So this statement will add one more value in the list. So you already have some values there, you want to add more, you can just add. Alright. Now where will this get added? This will get added at the end of the list. So the last index number. So 0, 1, 2, 3 and then it will become 4. Index 4. So it will get added after this. Got it? We will add value at the end of list. So here in this list, this sequence is very important, right? What is getting added where and all. Now, if you want to get the value of index 2, then you simply have to say colors dot get So this will get the value of index 2. What is there in index 2? Blue is there. Right? If you want to set the value of index 1 to pink, dot set 1 pink. Return the value of index 2 and the set will set the value of index 1 to pink. Fine, so this is how your list thing works. This list works for our S objects also. Let's say list of account energy accounts. You can say select name from account where industry equals energy. So something like this, right? The previous example that we were talking about account, we were only talking about one single record. Here when I talk about a list, we are talking about the list of accounts. So it can return multiple accounts as well. All the accounts which have industry, energy industry, right? So for storing multiple records, you need list variable. Or you say, if you want to say list of contact, Dell contacts. So you want to create a list of all the contacts from Dell. Should be like this. Select first name, last name from contacts where count equals Dell. Got this? So that is how it is. So that's about the list. Now there is another thing which is called a set. A set is also a collection of records, fine, or collection of values basically, but it does not have index numbers. Alright, and this is an unordered collection, so there is no defined order, and that is the reason why there are no index numbers here. A set is an unordered collection of primitives or S objects that do not contain any duplicates. So the difference between a set and a list is that a set cannot contain any duplicates because there is no index number. The records are distinguished based on the value of the record, not on anything else, right? So here, for example, if we have San Francisco, New York, Paris, Tokyo, now you cannot have another Paris. The moment you try to add one more Paris here, the set will see that okay, the value already exists in the set, it will not allow that to be added, right? So that is the thing, one value can exist only once here in the set. So depending on your requirement, again, eventually you will learn where to use a set and where to use a list. Depending on your requirement, you will choose whether you want to use a set or a list, right? Where you want to allow the duplicate values, you will use a list. Where you do not want to allow duplicate values, there you will use set. Fine. Okay, set of integer s is equal to new set of integer. Define a new set. So same way, s dot add 1 adds an element to the set. Okay. Here another thing is required, which is system dot assert. Okay. To check whether this contains a particular value or not. Remove the value from the set. So let's write a few examples for the set. Set is unordered collection of primitives or S objects. Yes. Alright, so this is what we have here, the set of string. I call it weekdays. Alright, so I have three values here. If I try to add Tuesday again into this, then it will not add Tuesday into it because Tuesday is already there. So it will just ignore that. Alright. However, here I was able to add red twice. So that is the difference. Alright. So this is an unordered collection. There is no index number associated with each value, and every value has to be unique in the set. Okay. It does not allow duplicates. Alright. So that is how our set of things is defined, right? So you can always go ahead and say weekdays dot add, and if you want to add Thursday also, so this will add Thursday into this, right? We have a system of checking whether weekdays dot contains a particular value or not. So this will return a true or false whether it contains Wednesday or not. Got this thing? Or if you want to remove a certain value from your weekdays, let's say you want to remove Monday from the weekday, dot remove Monday, right? So if you see your set and list are almost similar things, the only difference is ordered collection, unordered collection. Alright. So if you are kind of sure that what you want, then you select between list and set. In case you are not sure, then go with your list. So list is common. In case you do not know what you have to use, if you are not very sure on whether you have to use a set or not, go with list. Alright. But yeah, if you know, then you can use set. For example, now let me give you an example. Think of this. List of account understand this. Let's say I have 100 accounts in the system. In my system there are 100 accounts. Okay, let's say in my database there are 100 accounts. Okay, and these accounts are from 5 different industries. Okay, now you say list of account select history from accounts. How many results do you think this will throw? Not put any condition, nothing. Select industry from accounts. many results do you think this will throw? The first one and the second one, how many results do you think each one of them will throw? You understand the difference now? This will allow the duplicate values also, because industry is being repeated, but this will allow that and this will not allow that.
5.
Got it? So that is the logic. That is what we have. So if you just want a list where you just want to allow the unique values, it's a different thing. If you want to repeat the same value, as many times as it appears in the database, then list. Got it? So a good thing for you to start off with would be, in case you are not very sure, don't get confused on this list and set every time. Start working with list. All right. Gradually you will start understanding where a set is required and you will be able to use a set also. Alright. Okay. Now for defining list, there is one more way of writing a list. Instead of writing it this way, list of account, you can also write it as account this. So this is also a way of writing list. Okay. So it can be for anything. String. So this also means that it is a list. All right. This is how it can be written. Okay. So some places you will see that this is written in this way. It means this is a list. Okay. All right. Now the other data type, which is a map. List we have understood, set we have understood. Now the only thing that we need to understand is the map. What is a map? Map is a pretty simple concept. In map, basically what we are doing, a map is a collection of key value pairs. So in map what we have a collection of key and a collection of values, right? So that is the thing. For example, you have a list of countries and then you have a list of currencies, right? And you want to store a map so that wherever you are using the country, based on that, from that map you can fetch the value of the currency, right, based on the country. So that can be an example of a map. So countries will be the keys. So in map basically I will have two sets, right, two collections. One will be the key values and the one will be the key and the other will be values. So here in this example which I am talking about, country and currency, country is key, currency is the value, right? So there will be a value corresponding to each key. So collection of key value pairs where each unique key maps to a single value. So each unique key will map to a single value. For example, map of this. So this is the syntax. You can map anything with anything. I mean any data type with any data type. So mapping integer with string. New map. Then you put values into that. M dot put 1 first entry. So then this will map 1 to the first entry. M dot put 2 to the second entry. System dot assert contains key. M dot get 2. So if you have to fetch the value from based on the key, this is how you can do that, right? So more like our list index number. In index number also it was kind of a mapping, right? sorry, in the list also we had a kind of mapping, and that was being done based on the index number. Here it's not index number. There it was only index number. Here it can be something else as well, right? So if you go to list, you will see m dot get 0. So here you can you were able to retrieve the value based on the index number only. For a map, you can define your custom values. So that is the difference. Simple thing. I will map string with string, call it currencies, and then you can say new map. Microphones on mute, please. All right, so this is how you will do the mapping. US dollar India So these values, rupees and dollar, will get stored in the second string, and these US, so these are rupees and dollar are values, US and India, these are the keys. Okay, now you can have another string, let's say Indian currency equals currencies dot get India. Got this thing? So this is what it can be. So if you see similar kind of thing we did in list also, but I mean I'm just trying to explain this to you. If you are not able to relate the list with the map, no problem, don't have to understand that. But just if you look into this part, here also we had the same kind of thing. It was also a kind of mapping, right? But here we just defined one set of values, the other set of values was the index number by default. If you see this thing, this is also mapping, right? Index 0 red, index 1 this, so this is also mapping. But it was predefined map, so we never had to define the one side of it, and we always used to fetch the values based on index number. But don't you think it will be difficult for you to understand the index number, remember it every time? Now if you want to fetch a currency of India, then you always have to understand what is which index number it is stored in. So map eases out things for you. It simply gives you the option of fetching the value based on some key which you know, which you are aware of. So you know India, and you are fetching the currency of India, and you just put this thing. So it will. Okay. So this will simply go and retrieve the value from this key using this key. So you just have to give this. Okay. You want to put one more key value pair into the map, you can just say right? So this is how your map works. It's very simple, just the collection of key value pair. Now, since this first value, this is key and this is a value, right? So key will be unique here. You cannot have duplicate keys. Values can be duplicate. Values can be repeated, like dollar I have repeated here and here, right? But key has to be unique. Otherwise, you cannot perform this operation. If this key appears twice, can I get a value from the key? No. It has two different values. So every key can have only one value. One value can be repeated on multiple keys, but the key will have only one value. So key cannot be repeated. So this is what we have to understand. Key will be unique in a map. All right. Please let me know if you have any questions so far. No? All right. So now we understand basically how to define these different what do you call this data types and variables. All right. Give me a minute. Okay. So few small things apart from these variables which you need to understand. I think if else we understand. So if else is in case you want to do some comparison, right? Then you can just put if and then put a condition here, whatever condition, and then you can put statement here, right? Else put statement here, right? So anything, whatever you want to compare, if you want to see a particular account has a given industry or not, if a particular account has a given amount of revenue or not, right? So those things you can compare. So put the condition and then do the statement. So if that's true, then what should happen? Else what should be done, right? This can be a list of statements as well. So this is what we have, we understand. For again, this can be a loop as well. So for a given condition, you can do a loop and put your statements here. So we have if else, then we have for, and there are other loops also. The other thing that, so this is basically a loop, this is a conditional thing. Now, do you know what is a class? These are two things, I mean, once we do example, we will understand these a little better. Fine. Tell me if you know what is a class. Have you heard of what is a class?
A blueprint for an object.
Okay. What does that mean?
Basically defines all attributes for a particular object, what an object basically do. I'm just talking in concern of Java, not much in Salesforce.
Yeah. So that is correct actually, but I will simplify that a little more. So a class, for people who do not understand programming also, and if you have not heard of class is just a template. Okay, forget about template also. Let's understand this. I'll just tell you a small story on the class, and that will help you understand class a little better. So story is pretty simple. Initially, when we started working on the programming thing, so initially when these programming languages were introduced, so it was okay to have variables, and variables were defined. And why do we define variable, by the way? We define a variable so that we can call that variable wherever we want, right? So it can be used multiple times, right? So in different scenarios we can call the variable. So initially there was a time when defining a variable was okay, and that variable was called in different places. So your variable is defined, and you are able to call the variable, your work was done. Gradually, after a few years of this programming thing, it was realized that calling one variable might not help. So list of variables or the arrays were introduced, so that I can define multiple values in the same variable kind of thing, right? So fine, arrays also were introduced. Again, gradually after a few years, it was realized that not just single variables and arrays, we also need, at times we also need to have multiple variables stored in a place. Got that thing? So we should have a scope of storing multiple variables and what is this called, methods in one place, which can be called at different places, right? So I may have like 3 to 4 different variables. For example, I have a variable for colors, I have a variable for weekdays, I'm just taking examples, and I have one for account, right? This complete set of variables I need to call in different places, right? So for that, what we can do is we can put all these things into a class. Fine. So if I want to call these variables outside the program, what would I do? I will put it all inside a class. So think of a class which can contain multiple variables and methods. Okay. So I'll put all these things into the class, and then I can call the class somewhere and then define the values for the variable there. So now this variable is basically a template or a blueprint, as Anuj was saying, right? It's just a blueprint, but you can use the blueprint for different designs, right? So that is how it is. This class can be called at different places and different instances, and this can, the variables can be called, or the methods can be used there. Got it? So a class, for your simple understanding, class will have name, variables and methods. For your understanding, For people who are not from that programming background, let us just understand. So a class should have a name. If the class does not have the name, then how will you call the class somewhere else, right? So the class, first of all, has to have a name. Okay. So think of this as a container. This is an envelope inside which you will put the variables and methods. Okay. So that is it. And this class always needs to have a name, and it has to have a unique name. Got it? So all these programming that we are talking about, this can be put inside a class, and that class can be called somewhere else. Okay. A simple example for that can be a Visual Force page controller. So on the Visual Force page, now I told you that on Visual Force we will define some custom logic from our end, right? We will put our own variables, we will put our own values and all that stuff. That is what we talked about. Now think on those lines. So to define all that code, where would you define all that? You'll write all this in Apex, right? So in Visual Force, when you call it, you'll have to call it as a one single code collection of code. So what you will need to do, you will need to write all the code in a class and call that class as a controller, right? So once the class has been called, let's say the class name is C1. So let's say this is class is C1 and it has these three variables, okay, and methods. Now this C1 is is something which will be called as a controller on the Visual Force, and once you call C1 as a controller, your Visual Force page will have access to these variables also. Got that thing? So that is how it works. Okay. So that is about a class. So if we are okay with these concepts on the Apex, I think we are good at this point of time. Gradually, as you write codes, as you start understanding codes, more you write, more you will be comfortable with the coding part. But as of now, if you understand what is a class, if you understood the different data types, primitives, variables, I think we are okay at this point of time. Please tell me if you have any questions so far. Easy? Simple to understand? Okay. The only thing that only one more thing that you need to understand is this SQL query. I think SQL query again we are all aware of, right? So people who have not worked on SQL queries can again take out some time. I think w3schools.com you can find some SQL query examples also. SQL query is pretty simple, right? So you will have some select statements. So in Salesforce we call it SQL query, SQL, which stands for Salesforce Object Query Language. And then we have SOSL, which stands for Salesforce Object Search Language. Alright, so this SOQL and SOSL are the two different query languages that we have in Salesforce. SOQL uses a select statement, whereas your SOSL uses a find statement. So SOSL can be considered as a special type of select statement. It's used for finding the data for search operations and all. Fine, so we'll do an example to see how these two things are different. But for now, you just need to understand that these are the two different. Most of the cases, yes, SOQL is used. Most of the cases. Okay, all right.
some cases SOSL will be used. Alright, so once we do an example, wherever you just want to perform a search, you will do this find statement. Otherwise, select statement is fine. Alright, so the select statements I think we have used in some of the examples here. See, select name from account where industry equals energy. So this is an SOQL query. Select first name, this is an SOQL query. Got this? So this is all that we have on our Apex basics. Clear, everyone? Okay, fine. So if we are clear on the basics, I think we are good. What we're going to do is we will be talking about the Apex for Visual Force in our next session. So we will use Apex on our Visual Force page, right? So please take out some time to